Welcome to the 54th video in our series about Unix tools. We're continuing our discussion of regular expressions and search in the VI editor. This time we're going to look at search and replace, and we want to be able to use that. So how does that work? It turns out there's a special command, substitute, and it works like this. If you're in your file, you say colon, and then you say substitute, and you give the first pattern. Let's say we want to change Python, and then you put a slash and you put your second pattern, and maybe we want it to be Fred, and then a second slash to mark the end of the replacement. So Python is what you're looking for, and Fred is what you're going to replace it with. And then at the end you can add optionally a G. If you don't put the G, it will only replace the first Python on each line. It does this line by line. If you put G, it replaces every Python on each line. Let's try it. You can see that we have Python here and here and here. So after we run this command, those should change. So look at that screen carefully and then hit the enter key, and you're going to see we got a Fred Labs team. That was Python Labs. But this Python didn't change, and this Python didn't change. And so you're probably wondering why. And it turns out that we need more than the S. We need to tell it which lines to use. If you don't tell it which lines, it just does the current line. So we'll use the U for an undo. And now we need to say which lines do we want. And you can give a range with line numbers like 1 to 100, and then S and all the rest of it. Or if we want to do the whole file, percent says every line, substitute Python, and we want to substitute Fred everywhere on every line. And if we do that, the screen had to scroll, so let's go back to the top and take a look. So we'll do a 1 shift G. Something didn't work. 1 shift G, there we go. And you see Fred was created. Work on Fred, the Fred development team at Fred Labs, and you can see that yes, Fred Labs, all Fred releases. So everywhere we had Python is now Fred. And we did that with two parts of this substitute. First, after the colon, we said percent, which is all lines. And then we said substitute, and we said the existing pattern, which was Python, and the new pattern, which was Fred, and we said everywhere on the line. Well, let's figure out how to do it just for the first paragraph. To do that, you really need some line numbers. And when we do that, it's easy to type in the range. 4 through 7, substitute, Python, Fred, everywhere on those lines. And if we do that, you'll see I got Fred, and it worked. And here you can see it's still Python, so it didn't change this. Let's do a U, undo that change, and now we see Pythons and Python like we had before. This sounds wonderful. It sounds powerful because we can use line numbers, we can do the whole file, we can just do the line we're on. We can either do the first match or every match. But you notice that I chose an easy pattern. I chose Python that didn't have any special pattern match characters. What happens when it's not easy like that? That's what's called a string literal value. Exactly Python. What if I want to change something that doesn't exactly match and has something? Like those years. Remember? We had a pattern for years and it didn't match this one. But it matched this one and this one and this one. So how can we do that? Let's turn off the line numbering. No numbering. And then we say, okay, try to remember that old pattern. And that old pattern was beginning of word, a 1 or a 2, and then we have a digit exactly 3 times, and that's the end of the word. And this should jump down and match the 1995 at the beginning of the second paragraph, and it does. So that's the pattern. We want to change all those into something different. How can we do that? Well, % says every line in the file, substitute, and then we put in that special pattern that we already know. And then we need to say, what do we want to put instead? And if you just put a string literal, that's pretty easy. We could put something like yo-yo everywhere. And so this should say, in yo-yo, Guido continued, in May yo-yo, in yo-yo. Let's see if it works. And if we go back to the top, 1 Shift G, you can see, yes, in yo-yo, in May yo-yo, in yo-yo. And in fact, if we just search for yo-yo, it's working. Now, that's a silly change. And of course, it was easy because although the pattern we looked for had special characters, we replaced it with a string literal. What if we want to replace it with itself and then some extra stuff? Ooh, so instead of in 1995, I'd like to say in year 1995. Okay, so everywhere I'm going to search for something more complicated. In space and then the year. And I don't care if it's an uppercase I or a lowercase I. So it should change this one, and it should change this one. It should not change this one. Okay. And what do we want to change it to? Like I said, instead of in 2001, I want in year 2001. Okay, we're gonna give it a try. So we say search, and I'm looking for either at the start of the word, either big I or small I, followed by an N. That's the end of that word. And then in another word, I need to have 1 or 2 followed by those 3, exactly 3 digits. And that is our pattern. And then I have to say I want it to be in year. Oh no, I need to know, is this I a big I or a small I? And only this pattern knows. And then what year do I put? 1999? No, I can't hard code the year because this is a pattern match of the year. Oh no. We have to introduce something new called grouping. Okay. We can mark a group, and each group has a logical number. So the first group has to be big I or small I followed by an N, and that's the end of that word, that's the end of that group, and then we have a space. Then we have the second group, and the second group starts out a word and it has either a 1 or a 2, and then it has those 3 digits, and that's the end of that word, that's the end of that group. Okay, and then I need to get the first group. My output, I want to use the first group, \1, and then I want to add year, and then I want the second group, which is the actual year. And if I do that, and I press a G, I should get in year 1995, but this is still going to say in May 2000. This is going to say in year 2001. This is not going to change. At least that's the plan. Hit the button, okay? Press the enter key, and you'll say, that did not change. This did change, and it knew it's a big I. This did change, and it worked. So let's look for this pattern everywhere in the file, and it turned out there were only 2 places, and they happened to be on the first page. But it shows you that you can recycle the matches from what you search for, and you can use those in your replacement by doing the grouping. And the grouping uses \parentheses, and the first group is \1, the second group is \2, and you can have up to 9 groups normally. So cool. We can use patterns even in the replacement. Let's try something a little more interesting. How do we move to, let's say we want to get to this sentence, but we don't want to specify it exactly. Well, let me go back to the beginning of the file, and I'm going to hit some key. And I'm not going to tell you what key I'm hitting. But look where it goes. It's smart. Now, let's go the other way. It stops on those blank lines, which is pretty stupid, but otherwise it seems to work exactly the way we want it to. This is a special character. What you do is you use right parentheses, Shift-0, and that goes to the next sentence based on punctuation. So if I press let's say I'm right here on this H, and I press a right parenthesis, it'll go to Guido, which starts the next sentence. If I do it again, it'll stop on the blank line. I do it again, there's the beginning of a sentence. Do it one more time, blank line. Then it's going to go to the beginning of a sentence, and the next place it's going to jump to here. And if I use a left parentheses, it goes in the backwards direction. In this video, which is dragging on a little bit long, we've learned 2 things. We learned how to do search and replace, including using parts of the pattern in the replacement, and we've learned how to move by sentences in a text document based on punctuation using the right and left parentheses keys. I want to thank you for listening, and I hope you'll come back for our next video when we learn even more VI tricks.